Imagine receiving a letter from a killer, not asking for money, not asking for mercy, but demanding that his message be printed on the front page of newspapers. A shadowy figure who didn't just commit crimes, but turned them into a twisted game with the entire nation. In the late 1960s, a mysterious murderer began targeting young couples in Northern California, leaving behind cryptic letters, coded messages, and chilling threats. He claimed responsibility for multiple attacks and challenged police and journalists to decode his secret ciphers. Some of his codes were solved, revealing disturbing confessions. Others remain unsolved even today. Despite intense investigations, countless suspects, and decades of effort, his true identity was never officially confirmed. The case became one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in American criminal history, a story of fear, intelligence, manipulation, and a killer who seemed to enjoy the spotlight as much as the crime itself. The first known attack happened on a quiet night when two young people parked in a secluded area, expecting privacy and peace. Instead, they were approached by a man who opened fire without warning. There was no robbery, no argument, just sudden violence in the darkness. At first, authorities believed it was an isolated incident, a tragic but random crime. But months later, another couple was attacked in a similar setting. Same pattern, same cold precision. This time, one of the victims survived long enough to describe the attacker. An ordinary-looking man, calm, controlled, almost emotionless. What made this case terrifying was not just the murders themselves, but what followed. Newspapers began receiving letters written in an almost haunting tone. The writer took credit for the shootings and included detailed information that only the killer could know. He demanded that his coded messages be published, threatening more violence if his instructions were ignored. Imagine the fear in a newsroom, reading a letter from someone who claimed to have killed and was promising to kill again. The ciphers were complex combinations of symbols and letters. Amateur codebreakers, teachers, and even married couples tried their hands at solving them. When one cipher was finally decoded, it revealed a disturbing message about enjoying killing because it was more thrilling than hunting animals. The writer described his crimes as a source of personal satisfaction, reducing human lives to a twisted form of entertainment. Yet even within that confession, he never revealed his name. It was as if identity itself was part of the puzzle. As fear spread across California, the killer escalated his tactics. In one attack, he approached a couple during daylight hours at a lake. Wearing a strange hooded costume marked with a symbol, he tied up the victims before stabbing them repeatedly. The theatrical nature of the attack shocked investigators. This was no longer a random shooter hiding in the shadows. This was someone creating an image, crafting a persona. One victim survived and gave police a description of the costume, adding another layer of horror to the case. Then came a murder in the city. A taxi driver was shot in San Francisco, not in a remote lover's lane but in a populated urban area. The killer even tore a piece of the victim's shirt and mailed it to the newspaper as proof of his involvement. This act confirmed that he could strike anywhere, countryside or city, and that he wanted everyone to know it. Parents became afraid to let their children go out at night. Couples avoided isolated areas. The symbol he used in his letters began appearing on walls, in graffiti, in the minds of a frightened public. Police departments from different counties struggled to coordinate. Back then, communication systems were limited. There was no central digital database, no instant sharing of forensic data. Each department guarded its own files. The killer exploited these gaps, crossing jurisdictions and leaving confusion behind. Detectives chased hundreds of leads, interviewed thousands of people, and examined countless suspects. Some suspects seemed promising. Men with criminal histories, men who lived near the crime scenes, men who matched witness descriptions, but none could be definitively tied to all the crimes. One of the most chilling aspects of the letters was the psychological game. The writer mocked the police, criticized their intelligence, and sometimes even hinted at future targets, including school buses. At one point, he claimed he would shoot out the tires of a bus and pick off children as they exited. Whether he truly intended to do this or simply wanted to spread panic is unknown, but the threat alone was enough to terrify entire communities. Police patrols around schools increased. Parents escorted their children. Fear became part of daily life. Years passed, but the letters continued sporadically. Some appeared authentic, containing details that suggested insider knowledge. Others were suspected hoaxes, written by attention seekers hoping to insert themselves into the mystery. Handwriting experts analyzed every stroke. Linguists studied the phrasing. Psychologists attempted to build a profile. They described a man likely intelligent, possibly socially isolated, craving recognition, and motivated by a desire for control. He didn't just want to kill, he wanted to dominate the narrative. The media played a complicated role. By publishing his letters and ciphers, newspapers may have amplified his sense of power, yet refusing to publish them might have provoked further violence. It was a moral dilemma with no clear answer. Every headline about the case fed public fascination. True crime enthusiasts followed each development. The killer had transformed from a hidden criminal into a dark legend. Over the decades, technology advanced. DNA testing emerged. Cold case units revisited old evidence. Envelopes were re-examined for saliva traces. Fingerprints were compared using modern systems. Each new method brought hope that the mystery would finally be solved. Occasionally, law enforcement announced a potential breakthrough, only for it to fade under closer scrutiny. The case remained open, suspended between history and possibility. The cultural impact of the case cannot be ignored. Books were written, films were produced, documentaries dissected every detail. The story became a symbol of unsolved crime. A reminder that even in an age of investigation and science, some questions remain unanswered. The image of a coded letter arriving at a newspaper office became iconic. The idea of a killer who communicates through puzzles continues to fascinate and disturb audiences worldwide. But beyond the myth and media, there were real victims, young lives cut short. Families left with decades of unanswered questions, parents who never saw justice, survivors who carried trauma for the rest of their lives. In the shadow of the mystery, grief often gets overlooked. The killer may have sought attention, but the true story belongs to those who suffered because of his actions. Investigators have debated whether all the crimes attributed to him were actually committed by the same person. Some believe certain murders were copycat acts. Others argue that the consistent style of communication proves a single mastermind. The lack of certainty fuels endless speculation. Online forums analyze handwriting samples and compare timelines. Amateur sleuths propose new suspects every year. Each theory sparks fresh discussion, yet none has closed the case definitively. There is also the question of motive. Was it purely thrill-seeking? A desire for fame? A psychological compulsion? The decoded messages suggest he viewed killing as a form of recreation, but experts warn against taking his words at face value. He may have exaggerated or fabricated details to inflate his image. Serial offenders sometimes create myths around themselves to mask insecurity or inadequacy. The letters may have been less about truth and more about performance. Witness descriptions varied slightly, but generally pointed to a white male with a stocky build and glasses. Sketches were circulated, posted in police stations and newspapers. For a time, it seemed possible that someone would recognize the face, yet no identification ever led to a conviction. Some suspects died before they could be fully investigated. Others were cleared through alibis or lack of evidence. Automotive. The passage of time eroded memories and weakened physical clues. One cipher, unsolved for decades, was finally decoded in recent years by a team of code enthusiasts working independently. The message contained more rambling statements but still no clear identity. It was as if the writer took pride in revealing everything except the one detail that mattered most. The breakthrough reignited interest in the case, reminding the world that even after half a century, the mystery still breathes. The case also changed policing. It highlighted the importance of interagency cooperation and standardized record keeping. It demonstrated how media can influence criminal behavior. It showed that public fear can be as powerful as physical violence. In many ways, it became a study in criminal psychology and investigative challenges. Yet despite all the analysis, one haunting reality remains. Somewhere, a person committed these acts and lived among ordinary citizens. He may have had neighbors, co-workers, acquaintances who never suspected the truth. He may have followed the news coverage of his own crimes, watching detectives struggle, reading about himself in headlines. That possibility, that evil can hide behind normalcy, is perhaps the most unsettling part of the story. Even today, files remain open. Detectives continue to receive tips. New technologies promise new answers. Families of victims still hope for closure. And in the background of American criminal history, the image of coded letters and an unidentified killer lingers, a reminder that some shadows refuse to fully disappear, that some puzzles remain scattered across decades, waiting for one final piece that might one day reveal the face behind the symbol, the mind behind the messages, the truth hidden within lines of ink and blood, still suspended in time as investigators search archives, compare fragments of evidence, and revisit testimonies from witnesses whose memories have faded but whose fear once echoed through quiet streets and lonely highways where everything began on an ordinary night that turned into a chapter of darkness that has never completely closed. And after decades of investigation, theories, suspects, and technological advancements, the mystery still stands. A case that began with gunshots in the dark evolved into a psychological battle between a hidden predator and an entire nation. He wanted attention, fear, and control, and in many ways, he achieved it. Yet what he could never fully control was time. As years passed, the legend grew, but so did the determination to uncover the truth. This story is not just about unsolved courts or a nameless criminal. It is about the victims whose lives were stolen, the families who still seek answers, and the reminder that justice may be delayed, but the search for it never truly ends.